Hey, this is Steve Smith with ApplicantPro, once again with Inside MFG. Today's video, we are going to talk about job optimization practices part 2. In this particular video, we're going to talk about certain rules that you also have to follow in order to have your positions rank better. So if you recall in the previous video, we talked about the importance of a job title and the keywords as well as the content of the ad. So now today we're going to talk about some additional rules that are involved with most of the search engines that will help you rank better. So the first one is a concept called ad rotation. Ad rotation is actually really popular within the manufacturing world, as it is for the restaurant world as well as the call center world. Those positions that are what we call evergreen, where they're always open, right? You're always hiring for certain positions in your organization just in case somebody leaves or quits or what have you. So the importance of ad rotation is to understand that the algorithm is constantly looking at your job ad and deciding if it's appropriate to display to the job seeker. And so with ad rotation, you're basically doing 2 to 3 versions of the same ad. And so let's say we have version A, version B, version C. So during the month of March, I post version A. In April, I post version B. In June, I post version C. And then I rotate back again. So for each month, you're posting a different, it's the same position, right? But it's a different version. And the rule is the ads themselves have to be 75% different from the other ad, okay? That can be challenging. The cool part about AI technology today, though, is you can actually have AI help you write it, okay? But the important thing is to make sure that 75% of each ad is actually different. And the reason that it's helpful is because, especially if you have locations that are very close by, or again, those evergreen positions that are always there, there's this concept called job ad fatigue, where applicants see the same ad over and over again and they just don't respond to it. Well, let's be honest. The way I respond to an ad might be different the way you respond to an ad, right? I might cry at this ad, you might laugh at it. I might be indifferent about it and you might get way excited about it, right? Different ads will attract us in different ways. And so the other advantage of job ad rotation and having these versions of an ad is so that you can attract a different audience. And so you can actually get different types of people. In marketing, that's really what you're doing in marketing, is you're kind of testing different ads to see how they perform in the market. And making the assumption that the ad that I used 2 years ago is going to work today is a bad assumption, because job seekers' minds change, the algorithms change, there's a lot of changing factors there. And so this concept of ad rotation is such an important aspect. And for those of you that have multiple locations that are less than 25 miles from one another, you have to remember that you almost want to use different ads for each location so that you're actually attracting people to both locations. Because if it's less than 25 miles apart from one another, chances are that Indeed and such will actually truncate or block one of the ads and only show the other. So if you're posting ads where it's like, I have a ton of ads for this one, but then 7 miles over here in the other plant or location, I don't have anybody. Why is that? It's probably because of that 25-mile radius rule, which is why ad rotation is extremely beneficial. Now, another thing that has gone into effect in the last couple of years is what we call the pay equity rule. Pay equity and pay transparency laws have gone into effect in this country, and Indeed especially, and LinkedIn. Those are the two that have really started implementing this. They've already changed their algorithms so that if your job ad does not include pay information, they actually derank you. So you get less visibility because it's considered a quality control factor now. So if you want your ad to be considered quality for the search engines and you want it to display more often, you have to include pay structure. Now, you can include a range. You can say starting at and then have the number, but make sure you're also transparent about it. So for example, you don't want to have an ad that says, oh yeah, you can make between 35 and 85,000. That range is ridiculous range. And the algorithm will catch stuff like that because it says that, okay, if it's 35 to 85, are you actually starting people at 85,000? Or do you start them between 35 and 40 and then they have a potential to make 85 because of bonuses or other structures? So if you're going to include a range, you want to make sure that the range is only the range that you know you can start them at. That's the most important aspect there. So as long as you give them a range that's what you can actually start them at without permission, right? Then you're okay. And then you can always include additional instructions in the body of the ad that says, hey, by the way, there's these additional bonuses or incentives or other options that you can earn while you're working in this position and for the organization. Pay equity is so important because, like I said, it was a big change that occurred that is basically forcing employers to include pay information. And a lot of employers are kind of kicking back on it because not all states have passed those laws yet, but it doesn't matter. Indeed decided it's a quality factor and therefore we're just gonna de-rank you. If you don't include pay, and not only do they de-rank you, but now they also put up a guess. Have you ever had an applicant apply for one of your positions and they're like, well, wait a minute, I thought you paid such and such because it was on the ad, and it turns out it was just a guesstimate from Indeed. Indeed and LinkedIn especially are notorious for putting in guesstimations now, which sometimes skews the type of applicants you get, which leads to lower quality. So it's actually in your best interest to include pay. Now, another thing with optimization practices is this concept of ban the box. Ban the box basically says you can't talk about background checks and things like that during the interview process. You can still run a background check, you just can't talk about it, right? Same thing in a job ad. So one of the things that some of the job boards are doing now is that if you even mention the fact that you run a drug test or a background check in the body of the ad, they'll actually block your job. Now, there are some industries they still allow it, such as cops, fire department folks, people that work with children, like they still allow it in those types of ads. But for most of our manufacturing clients, unless it's a finance position, they just don't allow it. And so if you include that type of wording in some of your job ads, there's a very good chance that some of your jobs are being blocked because of that wording, because you're not in an industry that it's pertinent for that particular industry. So that's something really, really important to understand. Now, the last thing is what we call, in my book, I call it the 90% rule. The 90% rule means that in my job ad itself, I want to include what the candidate is doing 90% of the time. Oftentimes, a job description has 100 bullet points because legally we literally have to list out every single little piece that they need to know about the role. But did you know that in your job ad, you can just include a link to your actual full job description, so that way you can still write an effective ad, and that ad should only talk about what the applicant's doing 90% of the time. If you're going to add bullet points, try to stick between 3 and 5 bullet points at the most, so that way the algorithm doesn't ding you for having too many bullet points in your job ad. So these are some additional practices with SEO that you can implement into your job ads, and you can make some changes right away, and they will have a tremendous impact on the visibility of your jobs going forward.